Over the years, I've met a lot of really good worship guitarists, and I've met a lot of struggling worship guitarists. And one key difference between the group that's doing well and the group that isn't is that this group that's struggling doesn't understand. They don't see the patterns that are embedded in most worship songs out there. And so today, if you're a rhythm guitarist, I'm telling you, you have to know what I'm about to show you. It is a non-negotiable. So let's talk about how, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you and I as a rhythm guitarist, our job is to basically play 4 chord positions. If you can do that, I think you're gonna see yourself over time transition from this group of musicians who are confused and intimidated and feel like they're just wandering all over the neck to being part of this group that can walk in confidently no matter the song and know what they're doing. What's up, worship guitarists? I'm CJ, and this is Don't Give Up, a channel dedicated to simplifying and demystifying the world of modern worship music. Now, when I say modern worship music, what do I mean? Well, I'm talking about the most common musical characteristics that you see in the songs of the CCLI Top 50. And so these are songs like Goodness of God, I Speak Jesus, What a Beautiful Name, How Great is Our God, Same God, Waymaker, Christ Be Magnified, King of Kings. I'm assuming that many of your bands out there have played one or two of those songs before. Now, I happen to believe that the most common musical characteristics you find in these songs are very easy to play. I think anyone can learn how to do these, but it's only going to begin to make sense when you can step back and see the patterns that exist in all these songs. Matter of fact, this pattern we're covering today applies to every song that I just mentioned. Every Sunday, your song is going to be in one of 12 different keys. And I'm sure if you've been on your band by now or been around this world long enough, you've heard someone on your team shout out, we're in the key of C, we're in the key of E, we're in the key of A flat. And if they don't like you, the key of C sharp. And depending on how they were trained, you might hear someone talk about a minor key once in a while or a mode. Yes, that stuff exists, but right now I think you are gonna do just fine if you know going into this that your song every Sunday is gonna be in one of 12 major keys. So then what is a key? Well, a key is just a group of 7 chords. Here are the 7 chords of the key of C. You see our 1, our 4, and our 5 position are major chords. Our 2, our 3, and our 6 position are minor chords. Then we have this diminished chord in the 7th position. And so what is this 4 chord pattern then that we need to know as a rhythm guitarist? Well, it's just this. 90% or more of the time, you are playing your 1, 4, 5, and 6 positions. And from that list of songs I mentioned before, Goodness of God, I Speak Jesus, What a Beautiful Name, Waymaker, Same God, Christ Be Magnified, all these songs, 99% of these songs are the 1, 4, 5, and 6 chord. Now, this is important because when you play a worship song, there's a lot of stuff to keep track of in your mind. There's chord progressions, but there's also rhythmic patterns. And there's also melodic phrasing, and then there's also the map of the song and the dynamic path. And there's a lot that we have to consider. And so we need to be able to simplify all these sections as much as we can. And if I know going into it that this Sunday, pretty much any song that I'm given isn't just gonna be just 4 chords. And I know that's a running joke. A lot of pop songs are just 4 chords. You've all seen the ads out there. Learn 100 songs with just the 4 chords that I'm going to show you today. And whatever, that's great. But it's not just about 4 chords. It's about 4 positions in the key. If you're playing modern worship style music, I am going to pretty much guarantee you that 90% of the time or more, you are playing not just 4 chords, but you are playing these 4 positions in whatever key you're in. That means if your song was in the key of G, that your G, C, D, and E minor would be the prominent chords in your song. If your song's in the key of D, you have D, G, A, B minor. Now, when you can begin to recognize these 4 positions in your key, all of a sudden these groups of chords become like families. You can look at a chart and you don't see a bunch of randomness now. You see chord groups that you know belong together. They make sense together. And beyond this, this gives you a hint for what you need to be practicing. If you find out that at your church, half the time you're playing in the key of G, well, you know right now, no matter what song you're given, one of the best things you can do when you're practicing this week is to spend your time on the 4 chords of the key of G, the 1, 4, 5, and 6 position, which are the G major, C major, D major, and E minor. Why would you spend your time in the key of B if your church doesn't play there? If you haven't seen my video called the 12 must-have chords for modern worship, make sure you go check that out, because I break down the key of G, C, and E, and I talk about these big four positions, and I give you super easy chords to play in each one of those groups that I think sound like the modern worship style. Now, I do know that some of you out there, you kind of already know this, maybe you've seen other videos, and it's kind of old hat to you. Well, recently I did a poll among a bunch of electric guitarists, and I said, if you could change one thing about your playing, what would it be? And overwhelmingly, you know what came back? Guitarists came back and said, how do I break out of open chords and play in the rest of the neck? And I get that, I do, I remember that. I remember playing all kinds of open chords and feeling like I was missing out. Well, those of you who are ready to break out of the open chord world into the rest of the neck, this is absolutely essential. Let me show you one little application of why this is so important to understand key and chord families, but beyond this. Once we understand the principle of key, now we know numbers. And when we know numbers, this changes everything. But we have 7 positions. And here are the big 4: C major, F major, G major, and A minor. Now let's say you have a chord progression in your song that is F, C, A minor. Most of us, when we learned how to play, we didn't start learning by numbers or chord positions. We just learned chords with shapes. And so, when I started and I see this progression, F, C, A minor, I would have played, we'll just say an F bar chord, which many of you are familiar with. And if this is our first fret here, right there, right? That's an F bar chord. And then for the C, would have done this. And for the A minor, I'm sure many of you play that. So in your mind, you have a shape associated with that chord, which is great. But what that kind of programs our brain to think is that every new chord I have is a brand new shape. And if all we're playing are open chords, say in our top 4 frets, well, yeah, I can understand why we'd think that. But those of you who want to break out of the open chord world and access the rest of your guitar, what most of these guitarists are doing are using the same shapes for every key, because their shapes aren't necessarily associated to individual chords. The shapes are associated to numbers. So let's say you're playing this progression and you know that this is the 4 chord in the key of C. This is the 1, and this is the 6. Well, we'll take another video to get into worship style voicings. But so commonly in worship music, this 4 position adds the 2 or the add 9, and the 6 position adds the 7 to the minor chord. And if all I knew about this song was that I have to play an F, C, and A minor, and I knew nothing about numbers, my brain's going to go to individual shapes on the guitar. But when we can step back and realize that our job is really to play numbers, to play positions, and once you can boil your song down to numbers, well, let's say we're down here on the 8th fret. These 3 notes here are part of the 1 chord, which in this case is the C major. These 3 notes are also part of the 6th chord, the A minor 7. And if we just added this note here, well, we'd be playing 3 notes that are part of this F2 or F add 9 chord up here. And so if you didn't know anything about numbers, you could say, oh, that's cool. I have a pretty easy way to move around and play 3 of the 4 big chords in my key. But then that's the end of it. If you didn't know numbers, well, let's say you go to the next song. And your next song is E minor 7 to a C to a G. Well, there's a sense like you're kind of starting all over again. But as soon as we can convert these chords here to numbers, to positions, we see, oh, wait, that's just the 6th chord. That's the 4 in the key of G. And that's the 1. Wait a minute, we just played a 4-1-6 up here. Now I'm just playing a 6-4-1. Could I take the same concept we're doing here and apply this down here in the key G? Is that cheating? No, it's not cheating. So instead of being on the 8th fret now, I'm on the 3rd fret. And this is my 1 chord, my G. This is my E minor 7. And then for my 4 chord, I have this note here. And let's say for the next song, you play an E major and a C sharp minor and an A. If we convert that to numbers, what do we have? We have a 1, we have a 6, and we have a 4. There's all kinds of ways we could play that. But if we wanted to keep this same position, what if we moved up to the 12th fret? We could do the same thing, same shapes. Because we know these shapes aren't just associated to one chord, they're associated to a chord position. Now we can move this anywhere on the neck. You could do that all day long, and you know what? A lot of guitarists do. Now, I love open chords, but there is a time when you want to break out and begin to explore the rest of the neck. And knowing the principle of key and chord families and knowing how to identify which chord is in which position and what those numbers are is a game changer. So I want to challenge you this Sunday, go to your set list and turn those chords on your chord chart into numbers. Get in the habit of naming your chord progressions. When you see that C, D, E minor, G on that chord chart, turn those into numbers. It's a 4, 5, 6, 1 progression. If you can start to talk like that, you're gonna start to retrain your brain. Over time, it's gonna feel like the chord progressions aren't a mystery anymore. You're gonna start to see that every song, even the ones with flats and sharps in them, are actually just doing the same thing. So this week, to cut through the intimidation or the confusion or the boredom, convert those chords to numbers, and I promise you, you're gonna start to see this open up a whole new world in your playing. We'll see you next time.